Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Old Man Shouting at Clouds. And today, well, we're going to do it. We're going to dive right in. We're going to talk about politics and religion and other sensitive topics. And yeah, I'm going to try hard to kind of organize my thoughts, but I'm sure this is going to end as some kind of it'll kind of be ranty in terms of how it's delivered. Because I don't know if anybody's picked up on this already. I pick a topic and then I just kind of go with it. It's one take. I don't I don't edit this, so you get what you get. But anyway, I did want to talk to you guys about kind of the political environment and just really difficult topics in general and how we handle talking about those topics because it's pretty messy right now. And it to some degree it probably always has been, but it's even more obvious now. It's even more in your face now. It's harder to avoid it because of things like the internet, social media, etc. Right? So we're connected all the time through smartphones, computers, televisions. So you can't really hide from that dialogue or that kind of content. Now, when I was a kid, that was not the case. So there was no internet. It didn't even well, it probably existed on some level, but individual people did not have access to the internet. Right? If you were a standard family, you didn't have a computer that was connected to the internet, and you certainly didn't have a smartphone. In fact, cell phones weren't widely adopted when I was a kid. So you just didn't you weren't exposed to this kind of content anywhere near as frequently. There also wasn't really as much of the 24-hour news cycle. So, there'd be the evening news or the morning news, but a lot of that was local content and they really didn't delve into political or really controversial topics a whole lot. I mean, it did happen, but it wasn't every single day. Fast forward to now and it couldn't be any more different, right? And another point that I want to mention about when I was growing up is families didn't talk about this stuff. Okay, so politics and religion were taboo. You just did not talk about them at the dinner table. You didn't talk about them with friends. You didn't talk about them with your extended family. You kept your opinions to yourself, to the extent that I'm honestly not even really sure who my parents voted for. Or I think I may have learned since then, since I've become an adult, who my parents have voted for, but they sure didn't tell me when I was a kid. Some of that I actually think is good, but I'm going to touch on that in a second. Going back to that, though, you fast forward to today, and it's very difficult to escape that kind of content, even if you don't want to see it. It's all over your social media news feed. It's all over the internet. It's all over your television. There's a 24-hour news cycle. Your friends are talking about it. Your family members are probably now talking about it. It's just a lot harder to avoid it. And why did people ever avoid it in the beginning? Well, it was because it was very, very contentious, and it always has been. As far as I can tell, there's never been a time where politics, social issues, religion hasn't been kind of a flashpoint topic. And I think people just got to a point where they realized, is this really worth being furious at my uncle, not speaking to my nephew? No, it isn't. So we're just not going to have that conversation. And then that was it. Like you didn't have an option to hop on the internet and check out Facebook and find out that your cousin, nephew, uncle was screaming at the top of their lungs about this stuff, because that didn't exist. Bring it back to today, all of those things exist, right? Everyone almost has a smartphone. It's connected to the internet 24 hours a day, as long as it's turned on. Most people have smart TVs, computers, something along those lines that's connected to the internet. And so when you hop online, you get exposed to a lot of this content. In fact, a lot of devices, whether they're cell phones, tablets, computers, have notifications that will pop up and tell you about it. Hey, did you see this story? So even if you're kind of trying to avoid it, it's still pretty in your face. And the dialogue is a lot more public. So what used to be a person's inner monologue, so what they thought but they didn't tell other people, is now their social media feed. And you see it. You can see their inner monologue a lot of the time. And I think what a lot of that's led to now especially online, right, is the coarsening of discourse. What do I mean when I say that? Just the way we talk about these subjects has gotten a lot more, how do I want to put this? It's gotten a lot more aggressive, and there's no decorum. Like, people aren't worried about someone else's feelings. They don't even think about it really when they're posting something on social media, because you're not looking at that person. You don't have to look them in the eyes and hear the tone in their voice when you're saying stuff that's really bothering them. Now, I don't know that it's better to go back to the previous way of nobody talking about this, right? I think both of these things are troublesome. And this is, now we're going to get to the point of, what do I actually want to teach you about this? So what I want you to take away from this is not that we shouldn't be talking about this stuff, or, oh, let's just avoid it because it's uncomfortable. That's not the point. What my point is it's super important to inform yourself. Okay, don't just cast around wild opinions that you've done no research on. A lot of people are doing that these days. I don't know that people form opinions any easier these days, although we are bombarded with a lot more information than we've ever been in the past, and it's probably going to be even worse by the time you're watching this. But I think opinions have always been formed somewhat quickly, right? Like, we don't always spend 9 hours researching a topic before we form an opinion about it. Sometimes you'll see a snippet of news, a headline, right? Or maybe you'll see a 2-minute overview on the news about a topic, and you form an opinion on it. You either agree with the take or you disagree with the take. Or maybe you're at least interested enough to learn more about it. But a lot of the time we do form an opinion on something small like that. That's okay. I'm not saying that's bad, but we have to be careful about how seriously we take that opinion we've formed and how much we let it become a part of our identity. And I think that has gotten a lot worse since I was a kid. I think even when I was young, people identified themselves along certain lines. Maybe you were a conservative, maybe you were a liberal. But I don't know that it was as entrenched. I think I remember talking to more people who would say things like, yeah, I've voted for both, depending on the election. So I've voted for some Republicans, I've voted for some Democrats. It just depends on the candidate and the issues. I don't hear a lot of that anymore. It seems like people are very entrenched in one side or the other. And I don't think that the way a lot of the tools we have access to right now are set up lends itself well to anything other than that. So what do I mean by that? Well, the way things work as of 2024, when I'm recording this video, is a lot of platforms base their algorithms on trying to retain people's attention, right? So, what does an internet search browser benefit from? It benefits from you being on that browser for as much time as possible. Okay, what do social media platforms benefit from? They benefit from you being on their platform as much as possible, staying on it as long as possible. This isn't a controversial take. This is how those things work. Now, what I think a lot of people assign nefarious purposes to those companies and say, well, they're trying to convince you of this, they're trying to convince you of that. I don't think that's so much the case. I just think they're trying to get your attention, so they serve you content based on what you engage with. They're going to serve you content that's similar to that. So what that can lead to is people just entrenching further and further and further into their beliefs and not challenging their own preconceived notions, because that's the world they see. And that's where I think it's super important to be A, aware of the fact that that's how it works, and B, hold yourself accountable for trying to get out of your comfort zone, trying to get out of your bubble, and trying to consume other sources to round out your opinion, right? Because a lot of there are media sources today that I wouldn't say have an agenda, but they certainly lean in one direction or the other. You might have a certain news outlet that tends to lean conservative. You might have another one that tends to lean liberal. And they're reporting stories that kind of fit that narrative, or at least they're editorializing something that happens in that direction. So if you're only consuming content from that source, you might not hear an argument that a perfectly valid argument that's taking place on the other side. And there again, that kind of keeps us in our own bubble. We only are hearing opinions that sound like ours, and we're not getting the full story. So another thing that's worth keeping in mind is that most adults do not have the time to dedicate to any of these subjects to be truly experts on them, okay? That is super important to understand. Most of us adults are spending 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day on our profession, on the thing that we pay the rent with, okay? Pay the mortgage, that supports our livelihood. That's 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day you can't spend researching these subjects. So how well-informed can you possibly be? You also spend, or you should be spending, about 8 hours a day sleeping. That's 16 hours of a 24-hour day at least that are dedicated to things other than researching these subjects. So again, pretty hard to be an expert. And that's something that I wish more people would consider, is stop taking your own opinions so seriously. Stop letting it become a part of your identity. Don't be so emotionally attached to it. It's okay to be wrong. Most of us are wrong a lot. Even people that are experts are wrong sometimes. So make sure to go out of your way to be skeptical, even with your own opinions. And this might be one of the most important things. Like, of anything I could teach you, this might be more important than a lot of them, especially as time goes on, because we're not doing a very good job of that right now. Okay, we're not doing a great job of being skeptical, and we're not doing a great job of holding media sources, social media companies, our politicians. We're not doing a good job of holding them accountable for being open-minded and trying to be the cool-headed adult in the room. We're descending into tribalism and screaming at people that don't agree with us. That is not the way forward. And we're seeing this in our international politics with things getting contentious between the United States and Russia, things getting contentious between the United States and China. We've got the Israel-Gaza situation going on. All of these things are very contentious. They're becoming very violent. And in a world where multiple countries have nuclear arsenals that could literally eradicate life on Earth, it's never been more important for us to be able to find cool-headed solutions to these problems. And I think everything that I've talked about so far in this video is to kind of explain the background of why it's becoming this contentious, maybe why we're not getting better at talking. We're getting better at retreating to our corners and then coming out to fight. It's critical that we find a way to do better. I know this one's become a lot more preachy than hopefully most of them have been, or hopefully most of them will be in the future. But it's also something that's really important to me to teach you guys. And I hope that throughout this video and throughout whatever time I have with you guys, I'm not pushing my beliefs on you. I'm giving you tools to form good beliefs of your own. But that's the key there. I want to give you tools to form good, informed beliefs, not snap judgments, not unsubstantiated opinions that we're going to cling on to and fight to the death to maintain. Be curious, be open-minded, and be aware that even if you try to get things right, you can still be wrong. Embrace that. Don't view it as a knock against your pride if you have a take and it turns out that take was bad later on. That's okay. Just be willing to accept that, accept new information, and it's okay to say, hey, I got that one wrong. All right? I think most people respect you more for saying that than to just doubling down on a bad opinion. So anyway, enough ranting. I do hope that something meaningful comes out of this. And I love you very much, and I'll speak to you soon.